Oh no, did you turn off the recording? Okay, and this is Rambam on the Rav Yeshaber's lectures on Rambam's Moreh Nevuchim. And so he explains, we're going to read his words carefully because he says it precisely, but he uses difficult words. So let me just say it first. The problem is that when think about ourselves, we decide that we want to do something. We want to build a house, okay? We want to make something. So now what happens is and let's say it's not a house. We want to have a child. That's okay. So we go ahead. Imagine if we could choose, right, to create a child. Now, that child that we've created, okay, needs to exist. They need food. They need oxygen. They need their body to develop. They need safety. They need warmth. They need things. And since I have committed myself to creating this child, now I, to some degree, right, or to a large degree, become obligated to this child, right? The child, or the object of our dream, of our creative act, forces us to become obligated to, subservient to the creation, the act, the creative act, what we are bringing into existence. We become indentured to it. We become secondary to it. It demands us to take care of it because we brought it into existence. You have a situation, if Hashem created the world and sustains the world, Hashem becomes obligated to the world. Hashem is obligated. Hashem is second to his creation. That's what the problem is philosophically. That's what Rambam says. So here's how Rav Yeshaber talks about it, and then he gives an alternative explanation of how we view Hashem's relationship to creation, how we are not outside of Hashem. We are not an object of Hashem's chesed. Hashem is not, well, that's not true. That's not true. We're not an object of, we are not the recipients of God doing something for someone else's, which is the way we normally think about chesed. This is what Rav Yeshaber says, okay? We're going to go back to the Moreh Nevuchim in 353 in a minute. He says, all then revolves around the objective. Okay, when a person has a goal, wants to create something, right? Decides to create something, which he calls the objective. All then revolves around the objective, and the person is subordinated to its attainment or creation. As Rambam states, the end is nobler than the thing. The end is nobler than the things that subsist for the sake of the end. Does that make sense? The above, however, gives rise to a tremendous paradox. Hashem created the world by a free, intentional act. The world is thus the objective of Hashem's intentional act. But by our analysis above, this means that Hashem is consecrated and dedicated to the world. It would appear then that, with this consecration, there is a shift in axiological centrality from the infinity of Hashem to the finitude of the world. The world becomes more important, even though it's finite and it's an object. The paradox, however, arises only if this is the way we think. If we think that there's an absolute separation between God and the world, if we view Hashem's relation as creator to the world as his creation, as a relationship from a subject to an object, then indeed it would imply that Hashem as agent is committed to, in the sense we have explained, the world as an outside object, and it would further imply that Hashem is axiologically inferior and subordinated to the world. Does this make sense? It makes sense. That Hashem is devoted to and must commit himself to and is obligated to the world because the world is an object. The object of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem is outside of it. He's the creator of it. He is now bound to it. However, in Hashem's creation of the world, there existed no objective whose ideation prompted Hashem to give form to it. In other words, there wasn't an object, okay, that existed that Hashem had to do something for. There was no world to begin with. The goal of Hashem's creation, now listen here, was Hashem himself. Before creation, Hashem was all exclusive, negating the existence of anything other than him. Creation is an act of Hashem turning towards a, so to speak, outside by allowing a world to exist insofar as it would partake of Hashem's existence. As a result of creation, Hashem is still all. He is no longer, however, all exclusive, but all inclusive, including the world in his own existence. The world exists in Hashem. God's creation of the world for Maimonides means letting others participate in his existence. That is, there are others, but they exist by virtue of participating in Hashem's existence. Let's explain this, okay? Let's explain this. Of course, it sounds confusing. Don't worry. It means like this. One thing we are disqualifying completely in terms of the way we think is that Hashem is outside the world and sustains the world and is asked by the world to take care of the world. Please help, look down and do this and that for me, or right, and take responsibility for the world. No. Rather, the view is that Hashem is everything. And what he doesn't specify here is that the everythingness of Hashem, which exists on a totally abstract and mystical and non-material level, can exist in many different versions of itself. Just like there's love in my heart, which you cannot quantify, or it has no weight, it has no shape, it has no size, it has no color, correct? But from when I take that love and I do an act of self-sacrifice for someone else and give my time and my energy, what is that? That's another version of my feeling. And then if I buy beautiful roses, that's another way of showing my feelings. There's a sense of, there's a love, right? There's a feeling. And it can exist in many different forms. It could even show itself in a material form. Hashem is everything, okay? Hashem allows a physical universe, also a metaphysical universe, but we'll talk about the physical universe to come into existence, but never as an object outside of Hashem, as a version of the everythingness of Hashem that is still entirely included in Hashem. Mashal. Okay? A mother expands herself, okay, so that she can make room for, let's say, 50 billion fetuses, okay? They all exist within the mother. When the mother wants to feed the fetuses, what does she do? She eats. She eats. And what happens? The food that she has eaten sustains the fetuses. She is not feeding them as separate people outside herself. She's feeding herself. And by definition, the overflow sustains everything within her, because they're entirely an extension of and living off and completely, made from and part of her. This is the Jewish notion of Hashem's relationship to humanity. And we have special relations with the Jewish people because we get it and we understood it. We committed to all the things that means. Okay? We understand that we all participate in Hashem's existence. We are not outside of Hashem's existence. That doesn't mean God is in this book. Okay? That means, and it's a very hard thing because many religions have decided that it's easier to believe that Hashem is in a physical object. It's easy. So they drink God's blood and eat God's, right, the wine and the wafer and all that. That's like physicality. Like they're, what we say is that the way we perceive Hashem has a direct influence in the way we relate to others and how we perceive objects outside ourselves, as we started talking about, and how we view ourselves. We view all of creation existing within, or rather participating in Hashem's existence. We have spoken here over and over again of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu has made room for us, so to speak, by pulling back so that we don't see Hashem, right? Hashem withdraws from our perception, kind of making space, just like a mother pulls back, so to speak, to make space for the fetus in the womb. Hashem conceals himself and pulls back to make space for a version of the Metzias, the real truth, to exist, called the Adam, the human being. And that person feels separate, but not really separate. They know they're really part of something greater than themselves. And the Jewish people really understood that we were part of something much bigger than ourselves, and we committed to it through accepting the Torah and all of the behaviors that would constantly reinforce that. So that's how we see our existence. And we talked about the idea that Hashem pulls back to make room for us because we have a very, very important task here. We are co-creators with Hashem. Now, That directly, knowing that, that's the knowledge of Hashem. Now, obviously, the knowledge of Hashem that Yirmiyahu talks about, and the knowledge of Hashem that Maimonides talks about, doesn't end with this one idea. People spend their entire lives learning more and more and more and more, and it's endless. It's completely endless, and every time we learn Torah, we get more ideas and more nuances and more, understandings, more glimpses. So there's no end. But this idea that Hashem includes all creation is fundamental, because that's the reason for chesed, mishpat, and tzedakah. It has nothing to do with others, and it's not utilitarian, for example. We always misdefine the word chesed all the time. Chesed is never a kind or moral act you do for someone else. No, that is not what chesed is. When Hashem created the world from chesed, Hashem was not doing anything for anyone else. Hashem was allowing a different version of his everythingness to emerge. That was entirely still him or her. There's no gender here. What is chesed? Chesed is when a person allows others to participate in their existence. In order to allow someone to participate in your existence, okay, we have to be large of spirit. When a person's definition of I is strictly my body and my pleasure and what I need for my self-gratification, there's very little for anyone else to participate in. But when a person expands themselves, so when they say I, it's not just their body and their pleasure, but it's my spirit. It's that I learn, I get wiser, I get wiser intellectually, I get wiser emotionally, I try to understand people, I get wiser psychologically, I develop midos, patience, and justice, and righteousness. I develop myself. Then when other people participate in my existence, first of all, there's what to participate in. I can share my wisdom, I can share my insights, I can share my understanding. If I develop a skill, a doctor, whatever it is, a mathematician, they can participate, they can gain and share from that. I develop myself. I let new aspects of myself, my own abilities, my own strengths, my own talents be developed. So by definition, there's more to overflow and more for everyone else to participate in and to gain from. But I'm never doing anything for anyone else. Now, what that means is my goal is not to do something for you. My goal is to fully expand myself in all ways that I can, because I'm interconnected with everyone else. And the more I'm larger, the more everyone can participate more in my existence. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
In other words, the difference is a mother says to a child, look, I'm also a person. I need my time. I've been working all day. I've got to take a break for an hour. I have to go to the gym because I also need time for myself and for me to feel good. What that's saying is you are you and I am me and we have our own needs. That's not a good message, okay, for the kids to hear. It means my priorities are more than yours. This is the way you say it. I have been working all day and I'm tired. And I'm going to go to the gym because when I feel stronger and I feel more energetic, I am going to have more for you, more patience, more love, more time to read. That's what's going to happen. My self-development is not for me because my ani is tiny, but my self-development is because my ani includes you. You participate in my existence and I participate in your existence. Now, let's take it back and try to wrap this up. Why do people want to acquire that first type of perfection that Rambam says is zero? Stuff. Because if I have these things, it seems like I am very large and I can make big parties and people can participate in my parties, and that means that I am large. Okay, that I have more of me, that I'm expansive, which is a godly drive. That's what Hashem did to bring us into creation, but it's all identified with physical things, okay? That's not really being very large. Then we spoke about the second time. The third type is moral and ethical perfection, which just is, I'll do this for you, so you do this for you. All of these three things do not enlarge a person. In all of these three perfections, no one's participating it doesn't allow people to participate further, okay? It just allows me to coexist, to take care of myself, to be, protect myself. Knowing Hashem, understanding this fundamental idea that Hashem's relationship to us is that He identifies, so to speak, with us, lets us all come into existence as an act of chesed, which is expansion, self-expansion, overflow, chesed. Now we're going to go back to this Rambam quickly. Olam chesed yibaneh. The world was created from chesed. Be very careful. This statement does not identify how Hashem conducts the world. Saying Hashem builds the world with chesed is not in any way saying that Hashem conducts the world with chesed. It is saying what brought the world into existence was called chesed, which is excess. Rambam is going to say in 353, we've explained the expression chesed, page 5. We have explained the expression chesed as denoting an excess. Okay? You could read the rest yourself. Rambam establishes chesed means an excess, an overflow, so much so there's more for everyone else. Clearly. What we're saying here, and we really have a few more minutes to go, I'm sorry. We have to go a few more minutes. We're saying, number one, the goal to be like Hashem is never to suppress oneself. We do not believe in suppression. God is not suppressed or limited. The entire Bria came into creation as an expression, for expansion, an excess, an overflow. That more for Hashem, the more everyone can participate in. So what about a neder? What about isurim? What about all the things we're not allowed to do that cause us to be limited? When a person takes upon themselves a shvuah, I won't be an alcoholic, I'm not drinking wine, okay? Does a person do that to limit themselves or to enable themselves to be greater and more productive and wiser and more okay and more stable and healthier so that more people can participate in their existence instead of being an alcoholic who breaks every relationship they have and destroys everything and ends up with nothing? Correct? Clearly, when a person limits themselves, they know themselves and they know that this is a mechanism that I need, so I shouldn't be limited. And there should be more for others to participate in, more ways for others to participate in my life. Nobody can participate in my life if I'm crazed and angry and having temper tantrums and beating people up. Who can participate in my life and losing my job? Right? So it's a goal. The goal is to create a capacity more and more for others to participate in our existence. Now, a few very important things. I'll give a few mashalim here. We'll talk about Beethoven, we're going to talk about tznius, and we're going to talk about paro. 1, 2, 3. Beethoven. This is a good mashal. Beethoven had music swirling in his head, correct? By the age 3, he was already performing for, I think, the king or somewhere. Where was he? England? So, okay. Germany. Yeah, Germany. Someone was in England. Okay. So, alrighty. So what happens? Then Beethoven, okay, who has all this music in his head, which no one else can hear it, right? And no instruments are playing it. So Beethoven, at some point, allows this music to no longer be suppressed. And what does he do first? He starts to write it down on a paper. So it's black markings on a white paper. It's a version of what's in his head, but it's not a sound anyone can hear yet. Then people build instruments. Then they gather together and make an orchestra. Then they actually perform the music. There's many, many versions of the music, correct? And the entire process from having it in the head to expressing it in all its various forms, okay? Did Beethoven, what do you think? That Beethoven did this and went through this effort because he was trying to be nice to someone else? No. There was nobody else in the picture. This is an overflow of the self that allows everyone else to participate in the excess that I have. This is chesed. It is not a mystery why doing things for ourselves is the most gratifying thing in the world. Because Hashem only expresses himself, which we participate in, and we are part of. And that's what humans do also. We are never meant to say, I must sacrifice for someone else. No. I must be a greater person, which often means limiting myself in certain ways, so other people will by definition gain. And when they do that, I'll gain from them. So if people develop skills, someone's a doctor and someone is a musician, I gain from them, they gain from me. There's a flow of huge amount of human potential that everybody's benefiting from. Here's a classic example. We've said it many times before. Hopefully you know it, but it bears repeating. Tzniut. Modesty is often thought of as limitation. Why? So someone else shouldn't be disturbed. Now there's truth to that. We have a responsibility to know we live in a group and that other people get distracted and disturbed by when there's immodesty, and it's difficult for them. But is the objective of modesty for someone else? Is the objective of modesty limitation? Again, Judaism, right, is not about limitation. All the things that seem limiting are actually freeing and allowing us to be more expansive. So, in the equation, okay, of modesty, there's a body and a soul. We won't have to go through this in detail. Everyone knows it. Clearly, your body has some effect on your personality, right? If you're very tall, very magnificent, very graceful, very gorgeous, all right, clearly it's going to have an effect on your personality, and so will the other end, okay? If somebody's very, whatever, has disabilities or deformations or whatever, okay, that's going to have an effect on your personality. But to what extent? Entirely? Not entirely. The body is not us, and it doesn't have total control over us. And guess what? We do not have control over the body. How can something be me if it doesn't listen to me? Here, everybody do this experiment. Okay, grow me blonde hair, okay? Don't age, all right? Don't metabolize what I just ate, okay? The body doesn't listen to us. Don't get damaged. Don't deteriorate. It doesn't listen, so it doesn't even do our will. It's not us. Okay, they could say a million more things on this. Everybody knows it. But the Neshamah, that's unique to every person. That's what makes me feel sensitive about certain things, understand certain things, see certain things, perceive certain things, drives me, it makes me aspire to great things. And if I follow the call of the Neshamah, I become a greater and greater person. And whatever I choose and I devote myself to, I can have, and I develop spiritually. The Neshamah is me. Clearly, we want to be seen and to express ourselves and to not only present ourselves to others, but to exist and as primarily our Neshamah. And certainly we want other people to devote, to love us and to cherish us for our Neshamah, for what doesn't, what's not subject to damage, what's not outside ourselves, which is our body. The problem is that the Neshamah is invisible. We have a problem. So, the objective of tzniut is not to cover oneself. The objective of tzniut is to expose and reveal the Neshamah of a person. If there's any part of the body that a glimmer of the soul shines through, where would it be? Eyes. Eyes, face. Give me some psukim. Give me some sayings. The eyes are the window of the soul. Chachmat Adam Ta'ir Panav. The chachma of a person enlightens their face, the person's eyes, their expression, their conversation. Right? This is where the Neshamah shines through. What tzniut is trying to do is expose the Tzelem Elokim, the godly part of us, the soul. Why? Because then we look at ourselves differently, and we relate to other people differently, and they relate to us differently. We are presenting a different picture. We are, and we see ourselves, and that's the objective. We experience ourselves as godlike creatures, unique, with the capacity to do great things. And the other stuff is necessary to our existence, and it even gives us pleasure, and it's the house of our Neshamah, but it's secondary to our Neshamah, and it eventually goes in the ground, right? So that's tzniut. Tzniut is, again, not to ensure that a person not be limited. We do not want to shrink the ani That's when we do things that are so self-absorbed and like we shrink our concept of ani. I want you to read in here, which I didn't get time, of Shimon Shkup when he talks about the ani. Look at it. It's very important. I want to say one last thing. I know it's so late. One beautiful thing from my grandfather, which I want to get for posterity on the video. My grandfather says, if you look on page 6, Paro said to Yosef, Atati al Besi, you're going to run my house. Va'alpicha yisha kol ami, and according to your command, my people will all be directed. Look what he says, Rak hakisei egdal mimecha, which pashat means only in respect to my throne will I be greater than you. In other words, you'll be the main man here, but I'm the front man. I'm the guy on the throne. Okay? My grandfather brings a whole piece here where HaKadosh Baruch Hu says the same thing essentially to Am Yisrael. I am greater than you. Well, that's what the pshat seems to mean. And we'll do this further another time. My grandfather explains that what Paro was really saying, what Hashem is really saying. Paro was saying, if you're only my throne, Rak HaKisei, only my throne will be greater, mi mecha, not than you, but from you, because of you. If I'm the emperor of a kingdom and my advisors are idiots, okay, then that doesn't expand me. That doesn't allow people to participate in my greatness because I don't have anything to offer because the people telling me what to do don't know what they're doing. Okay? But if I'm the emperor of a kingdom whose wisest advisor, whose chief of staff is Yosef, who's the smartest person in the world, then I am a greater king. And I, in my kingdom, will be a greater kingdom. And people will have more that they can gain, and they will come and seek out and participate in our national existence because we are doing things on a higher level. Same thing with Hashem. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu, okay, is the king of everything, but we are limited and small and care about nothing but our petty existence. And then we put down everyone else and make sure we see them as small and irrelevant. And we put down all the nations of the world and refer to them in terrible names. Even the people that work in our homes who do so much for us, we insult them with using terrible derogatory names for them. Chas v'shalom. Hopefully this doesn't happen, but it could happen. When we put down others, when we discredit others and devalue the achievements of others, you know what we're doing to Hashem? You're the king of everything, but everything is pretty pathetic. However, when people develop themselves to the maximum capacity so that they have so much to offer and so much for everyone else to participate in, and they get smarter and wiser and are more understanding and more skilled and they discover more, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu is greater than because of us, not than us, because of us. Okay? Our goal is to make ourselves as great as possible so that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is as great as possible in our understanding and the world's understanding, and to know that the greatest chesed of all is to do for the self, to develop the self for the sake of the whole. Thank you. All right, everyone? Have a wonderful